Chapter 6: The Aftermath and the New Beginning. The Fury arrived precisely 2 hours after the Phantom of Helvetia Private Bank and Trust had vanished into the digital ether. Leo was standing at his window, swirling the last of Aaron's fine whiskey in a crystal tumbler, savoring the silence. It wasn't just the absence of noise, it was the specific, satisfying silence that follows a perfectly executed plan, the silence of a checkmate. The tranquility was shattered by the sound of his office door being thrown open with such force that it slammed against the interior wall, the impact shuddering through the floor. Silas Croft stood, framed in the doorway, his face a mottled purple, his expensive suit rumpled as if he'd been wrestling a bear. His small eyes were bloodshot with a rage so pure it seemed to vibrate in the air. He wasn't just angry. He was a man whose entire reality had been dismantled, a god who had been casually swatted from his throne. "You!" he bellowed, the word a raw, guttural explosion. He stomped into the room, his fists clenched, his sheer mass making the malarious space feel suddenly claustrophobic. "You piece of filth! The bank! The Swiss! It was all you! I'll ruin you! I'll sue you into the goddamn Stone Age! I'll have your license, your career, everything!" Leo didn't flinch. He slowly turned from the window, taking a deliberate sip of his whiskey. He looked at the blustering billionaire, not with fear, but with the detached curiosity of a biologist examining a particularly noisy specimen. "My license?" Leo asked, his voice dangerously calm. "I don't have one to take, Mr. Croft. I was disbarred years ago, a technicality, you understand. You should have your people do better research." Croft's tirade faltered for a microsecond, the first brick pulled from his wall of fury. "Then I'll sue you for fraud, for tortious interference. I have an army of lawyers who will bury you in litigation until you beg for mercy." Leo walked calmly to his glass desk and picked up the single sheet of cream-colored paper that lay there like a holy text. He held it up. Croft's own arrogant signature seemed to mock him from across the room. "Sue me for what, exactly?" Leo asked, his tone laced with a chillingly polite logic. "For convincing you to put, in writing, a formal directive forbidding my client from fulfilling his lease obligations? You accuse me of fraud, yet what court in the world will listen when you present a document signed by your own hand that proves you were the one who orchestrated the entire situation?" He let the words sink in. "You will claim a phantom Swiss bank tricked you, and my defense will be your own letter. I will argue that you, Silas Croft, a renowned real estate tycoon, had a last-minute change of heart. You recognize the immense historical and commercial value of the vault, your words, I believe, and you legally compelled my client to leave it. Who is a jury to believe, the disbarred lawyer or the billionaire who put his genius business decision in writing?" Croft's face began to drain of color, the apoplectic purple fading to a sickly, pasty gray. The threats of lawsuits were turning to ash in his mouth. He had no proof. The ghost bank had left no fingerprints, no trail. There was only his own greed, immortalized on his own letterhead. As for interference, Leo continued, circling his desk like a shark. "You mean my interference with a deal that never existed? With a bank that has no address, no employees, and no assets? You would have to stand up in court and admit that your legendary business acumen, the very foundation of your empire, was so thoroughly blinded by avarice that you were duped by a ghost. Imagine the headlines. Imagine what that would do to your stock price, to your reputation among your peers." He stopped directly in front of Croft, close enough to see the sweat beading on the man's fleshy brow. "You have no recourse, Silas," Leo said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "You can't sue me. You can't sue Marco, and you can't touch the vault. Because if you so much as scratch it, you will be violating your own binding legal directive, and my client will own a piece of your company for damages. You wanted the vault, you got it. It's your problem now, a $300,000 problem at minimum. And every single day, a new legitimate tenant looks at that space and walks away because of it. The price goes up." Silas Croft stared, his mouth opening and closing silently like a beached fish. The rage was gone, replaced by the hollow echoing shock of total and complete defeat. He had been outmaneuvered, outthought, and surgically dismantled with his own arrogance as a scalpel. He was powerless, a king in a kingdom of one, trapped in a prison of his own making. Without another word, he turned and staggered out of the office, a deflated, humiliated shell of a man. Leo watched him go, then calmly finished his whiskey. The victory fell clean. A week later, Leo found himself following the scent of garlic and fresh basil once again, but this time it led him to a different neighborhood. Marco's new restaurant, Nuove Lanterna, was brighter, larger, and filled with the cheerful buzz of a happy crowd. The tables were full. Laughter echoed off the freshly painted walls, and Marco, wearing a clean white apron, moved through the dining room with a lightness Leo hadn't seen in years. When Marco saw him, he broke into a genuine, unburdened smile. He rushed over and pulled Leo into a fierce, grateful hug. "Leo, come, sit," he insisted, leading him to a small table near the open kitchen. "On the house. Everything is on the house for the rest of your life." "I can't have my favorite chef going out of business," Leo said, smiling back. "The place looks incredible, Marco. You're thriving." "It's more than that," Marco said, his eyes shining with an emotion that went far beyond business. He pulled his phone from his pocket and swiped to a photo, pushing it across the table. It was a picture of a young girl, no older than 10, with her father's warm eyes. She was sitting up in a hospital bed, a colorful bandage on her arm, but her smile was wide and radiant. She was holding a teddy bear and looked, for the first time in a long time, like a kid without a care in the world. "The surgery," Marco said, his voice thick with emotion. "It was last Tuesday. The doctors say it was a complete success. The money you saved us, that letter you tricked out of Croft. It didn't just save my restaurant, Leo. It saved her, my little girl. How do you thank a man for that?" Leo looked at the photo, at the pure, uncomplicated joy on the girl's face. Cold fire he carried inside him, the cynical engine that drove him, seemed to warm for a moment. This was the other side of the equation. It wasn't just about tearing down the bullies. It was about what grew in the space they left behind. This was a real victory. Later that night, back in the silent sanctuary of his office, Leo found a thick, unmarked manila envelope on his desk. It hadn't been there when he left. That meant it was from Aaron. He slid it open. Inside, there were no pleasantries. Just a collection of documents, financial reports, internal memos leaked from a weak hole, and a glossy corporate profile. The profile featured a smiling, confident woman in her 50s, the CEO of a predatory pharmaceutical company that had recently tripled the price of a life-saving children's medication, pricing it out of reach for thousands of families. At the bottom of the profile, a single sentence was scrawled in Aaron's familiar, spidery handwriting. "They say she's untouchable. I say she looks like a good next project." Leo leaned back in his leather chair, the city lights twinkling below like a field of fallen stars. He read the woman's self-congratulatory bio, saw the calculated warmth in her photo, and felt that familiar, cold fire ignite once more. The satisfaction of destroying Silas Croft was already fading, replaced by a new hunger. A new game, a new target, a slow, dangerous smirk spread across his lips. The legal Avenger's work was never done.